Picture this. It's the 17th century. England is literally tearing itself apart. You've got civil war, a brutal, messy mix of politics, and these incredibly fierce religious battles between Catholics and Protestants. There is persecution, there's intolerance, instability is just everywhere. It is a world that is absolutely desperate for a new way forward. So this was the fundamental question of the era. I mean, how do you even start? And it's this exact problem that the philosopher John Locke set out to solve. He wasn't just looking for some quick fix or a temporary truce, no. He was searching for a foundational principle, something solid you could reconstruct an entire society on from the ground up. And Locke's solution? Well, it was a single, powerful idea. I want you to think of it like a stone that you drop into a still pond. The idea itself is super simple, but the ripples it creates, they just spread out and end up transforming everything they touch, from religion to morality, all the way to the very structure of government itself. And this is the stone. The idea is called evidentialism. At its core, it's a straightforward but totally radical principle. You shouldn't just believe things because you want to or because someone in charge told you to. Instead, you have a duty to weigh the evidence and let that, and only that, guide what you believe. This became the critical starting point for all of his thinking. And here it is, right from Locke himself. I know, to us today, it sounds like total common sense, right? But you have to remember, in a world driven by dogmatic authority and just violent conviction, this was a revolutionary act. It was suggesting that our reason, not brute force, should be the ultimate judge of what's true. So where does this first ripple land? You guessed it, right in the middle of the most contentious, most explosive area of 17th century life, religion. Locke takes his rule of reason and applies it directly to matters of faith and divine revelation. Now, Locke wasn't an atheist, not at all. He was a devout Christian. But he argued that any so-called revelation, a message from God, had to be tested by our God-given ability to reason. He was really skeptical of what people back then called enthusiasm, these unchecked private claims of revelation that nobody could verify. For Locke, it was simple. If a revelation contradicted basic logic, it couldn't possibly be from God, because a rational God doesn't contradict himself. So Locke proposed this really simple test to make his point. Okay, 1, if a revelation agrees with reason, it's acceptable. 2, if it goes beyond what reason can figure out on its own, like some theological mysteries, that's fine, also acceptable. But 3, if it goes contrary to reason, if it's just logically impossible, then it simply cannot be a genuine revelation. Period. Reason is the gatekeeper. Now, why was this such a big deal? You have to keep the context in mind. England had just clawed its way out of a bloody civil war that was fueled by religious hatred. There was basically zero tolerance for anyone who didn't conform to the official Church of England. And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate. Laws like the 5 Mile Act had devastating real-world consequences. It meant that Baptists and Quakers and other groups were literally forced to walk miles out into the countryside just so they could worship in secret, always fearing persecution. So Locke was arguing for a rational basis for religious toleration in the face of this kind of brutality. Okay, let's follow that next ripple as it spreads out, because you can see how this all starts to connect. Locke's commitment to evidence and experience, well, it completely reshaped how people thought about right and wrong. Before Locke, a lot of people believed we were just born with a kind of built-in moral compass, these innate ideas of good and evil. But Locke, as a committed empiricist, he said no way. He argued that if that were true, then everyone in every culture would have the exact same moral rules, and they clearly don't. He argued our minds at birth are a blank slate, a tabula rasa. So, if we aren't born with moral knowledge, where does it come from? Locke pointed to 3 sources. First, we can deduce moral laws using our reason, just by thinking about what it means to be a rational being. Second, we learn from experience, from pleasure and pain. God, he argued, designed the world so that good actions tend to lead to happiness and bad ones lead to suffering. And third, we have divine revelation, like the moral laws you find in Scripture. This line of thinking connects directly to his idea of freedom. And here, Locke makes a really sharp distinction. He says that the whole philosophical debate about whether our will is free is just a confusing mess. What really matters, he says, is freedom of action, the power to actually do or not do what you want. And this ability to act is the absolute cornerstone of his entire political philosophy. And that brings us to the final and biggest ripple, the one that would go on to directly inspire revolutions. Locke takes all these ideas about reason, about morality, about freedom, and he uses them to build an entirely new blueprint for what a government should be. Because we are rational beings with this freedom to act, Locke argues that we have certain rights. And these rights are not granted to us by a king or by a government. No, they are inherent to our very nature. They are natural rights. He identifies three core rights: the right to life, the right to liberty, which is that freedom to act we just talked about, and the right to property. And he added this fascinating little detail, saying that the right to property isn't unlimited. You're entitled to the fruits of your labor, sure, but only as long as you leave enough and as good for others. Now, this leads to a radically different idea of what government is even for. His contemporary, Thomas Hobbes, famously argued that life without a strong ruler was a war of all against all, and that to get any security, we have to surrender our rights to an absolute sovereign. Locke completely disagreed. He said we form a government not to surrender our rights, but to better preserve and protect the rights we already have. And this is the result, the foundational idea that government is not our master, but our servant. Its only legitimate job is to protect our life, liberty, and property. This vision of a government with checks and balances, with a division of powers, and with clear moral limits is the bedrock of modern liberal democracy. So we've seen how one simple idea, that stone in the pond, rippled outwards to completely reshape the world. But what does any of this mean for us, here, today? Let's just do a quick recap of that journey. It all started with one core idea: base your beliefs on the evidence. That simple rule provided a foundation for religious tolerance. From there, it created a new understanding of morality as something we learn through reason and experience. And finally, it all culminated in a political theory where a government's only real purpose is to protect our natural rights. And that leaves us with a final thought, a question for our own time. We live in an age that is just overflowing with information, but it's also plagued by misinformation, by propaganda, by online enthusiasm. So in this context, is Locke's fundamental demand that we proportion our beliefs to the evidence? Is that not just some historical idea, but an urgent, maybe even necessary tool for our own survival?